BPG cars.
It's okay that you're feeling blue, 'cause I'm here to stay. I know there's a way, 'cause if I'm being true, I must say that I know what you're going through. All the funny stuff that's going through your head.
Okay, if you haven't watched the other sections of this project, go ahead and watch it now. You're going to need a long bar attached to your crankshaft, and also this jack stand underneath the bar. And you're going to need a long extension like this and a 22mm socket or 7/8 inch socket for this purpose. And as soon as you get everything mounted in the jack stand underneath the bar, make sure it's stable, and we're going to be ready to start the engine with this attached. What it does is it counter rotates the bolt, and this is held in place, and it will force the bolt off of the crankshaft, as you see here. This is something I've done for years with diesel engines and big V8 engines. It's not going to damage your motor whatsoever. Regardless of what people on the internet have said, I've been doing this since before the internet was even invented. So once this thing is loose, we're going to proceed with taking the crankshaft pulley off, and we're going to do it carefully by hand. As soon as the bolt is loose, go ahead and loosen it with your fingers. Make sure it's finger tight, or it can be loosened with your fingers. And as soon as you're done with that, set it aside and make sure the crankshaft is loose enough to remove with your hand. If it's not, we're going to have to be using a puller for this job. Okay, you're going to be using an 2-jaw puller for this job, and get your bolt, put it in finger tight, and make sure it sticks out about halfway. That's all you need. And then you're going to be clamping on the outer lip of this pulley. Do not use it to clamp on the tooth portion of the pulley. If you do, it will damage it severely. Finger tighten it until it's snug. Once you got it snug, you're going to be using an open end wrench to remove this pulley. The reason why I use an open end wrench is because it's easily adjustable, and I can get a feel for the finger tightness of the pulling work that I'm about to do. Okay, you're going to be turning the bolt of the puller clockwise, and watch as the pulley comes out. Nice and slow. Do not overdo it. Do not do it too fast. Once it's done and the pulley is out, then we can proceed to the next job. Just in case you didn't see the angle of the first video, this is another angle of the video. You just put your nut on, or actually your bolt on, finger tight only halfway, and you adjust your 2-jaw puller around the pulley, and then you do as I've instructed. Snug it down with your hand, and once it's snug, get your open end wrench and you turn it clockwise until the pulley comes out. Do not use this jaw puller on the tooth portion of the pulley. It will damage it. Okay, and just turn it clockwise and it should come right out. You shouldn't need a lot of force to do this. Okay, after that, you're going to start going on to the cam cover area of the engine and start removing the motor mounts. And be sure to remove all the bolts on the upper portion of the engine. You're going to be removing the AC compressor. You're going to be removing the timing belt. You're going to be removing the accessory belt. and everything else is connected to the engine. And at this point, they're going to be small 8mm bolts that are going to be surrounding the cam cover on the top part and the bottom part. This is just covering the top part of the engine. Make sure everything is out of the way, including the AC lines, and everything else should be clear. And after this, you're going to proceed to do the bottom part of the engine. Let's proceed to the bottom. Get a 8 and a 13mm socket ready, and your 3/8 inch ratchet, and you're going to be removing the bolts surrounding the timing cover at the bottom part of the engine. Slowly remove them one by one, and don't forget any, because even one bolt will keep this thing from coming apart. Take the 13mm bolt that you see here that I'm removing. It's the only one there, and everything else should come off nice and easy once this is done. It's a very simple process, and just make sure that nothing is in the way. All the parts of the bottom of the engine are removed. Make sure the harmonic balancer or the crank pulley is removed. Make sure the power steering unit is out of the way. Make sure the AC compressor unit is out of the way. And don't forget the water pump. Make sure you do not remove that because it's not necessary on this engine. And as soon as everything is removed, put them in a separate container on the side so you don't lose them, because the bolts are very tiny. After you're done with the crank side, go to the top of the engine and start removing the camshafts. And we're going to proceed by clamping down on the hexagon part of the camshaft with a vice grip. This is not recommended, but I do it because I feel that the cam or the chain has minimal stretch when I do it this way. It prevents the chain from being stretched in any direction if you have two vice grips. And the chances of cracking the head is minimal because of the fact that the head is very strong. It's stronger than you think. And even after torquing of this camshaft bolt, the head will not crack. I've tried this many times, but it's not recommended, but this is the method that I use. It's quick and it's easy and it's very effective. Next, we will be removing the timing chain tensioner. It's going to be off the left side of the engine, and it's going to be attached with 8mm bolts as well. Once you've loosened these, put the bolts on the side in a separate area because it is oiled, so you don't want dirt to get caught on it. And the tensioner is going to be removed with the screwdriver. Use a flathead, but be very, very careful because if you nick it, you might cause a pressure leakage because it is oil fed. So you have to be very, very careful. And once it's loose, you just remove it with your hand or remove it with a plastic pry bar will be fine, but I use a screwdriver here because I've had plenty of experience with these. You just have to be very careful, and also have a pan underneath and ready because you're going to have oil coming out, lots of it. So be prepared for that. And To install this device, we're gonna do that in another video or another part of the series, because when we put the camshaft tensioners and everything else together, we're gonna do it at that time. Okay, at this time, you should have had your camshaft bolts loose by now, and also the tensioner should have been out. So what you want to do is you want to take out your timing chain. You can start from the top or you can start from the bottom, it's up to you. Make sure nothing gets caught on it, make sure the motor mounts have been removed at this time, and make sure you do not drop this timing chain on the ground. Check it for nicks, scratches, cuts, breaks, or any kind of damage, and if it's undamaged it should be fine and you could reuse it. And just set it aside, and we're going to put all the other parts of the engine together in consecutive order so you don't lose it. Start removing the camshaft bolts and when they're loose, and make sure that they're not connected, and we're going to do that later. Or you can snug them down and make sure they don't come off, it's up to you, because I usually remove them so they don't fall off and get lost. And at this time we're going to be ready to remove the cams and all the associated hardware with the cams. We're going to start removing the cams now. Before you do that, you need to get a center punch, a very small one, designed for high tensile steel, okay? And then you're going to need a hammer, a small hammer. And what you're going to be doing is you're going to be marking where all of the cam journals are going. Actually, the cam caps is what they're called. You're going to be marking them in consecutive order, starting from number 1 to number 5. You're going to need to mark them on the outboard side so you know which is their orientation. There are 5 cam caps, 1 on each side, 1 for the intake and 1 for the exhaust cam. You're going to mark the number 1 cam as 1 punch, the number 2 cam as 3 punches, the number 4 and 5 or so on in the order and it was done. And you're going to mark them on the outboard side so you don't get them confused on the orientation. Don't forget to do that. And later on we're going to mark the caps with another marking of paint to let you know which side is the exhaust side and which side is the intake side cams. Okay, after you're done punch the cam caps, proceed by removing the cam bolts. You're going to be needing an 8mm to remove the bolts. You're going to be working your way inside to the outside on each cam bank separately. You're going to start by working on the inside in a crisscross pattern and work your way out. Both the intake and exhaust cams are going to be done this way but separately. Once the bolts are loose, then you're going to start marking them with the paint on the exhaust side so you'll know which is the intake and which is the exhaust side. Just loosen them up for now, and they don't need to be completely out at this time. We're going to be doing some other work before we do that. Here's a close-up view of the cam caps. As you can see, they're going to be punched in consecutive order from number 1 to number 5. And you're going to be putting them on the outboard side so you don't get the orientation confused. And you're going to have each cap is going to have its own punch. So like this example here, cam cap number 5 is going to have a number 5 punch on there. Now start removing the 8mm bolts one by one on each cam bank. Take this time to set up your camshafts with the valve cover. You're going to reverse the valve cover so you can put the cams and the gears and the chain and all of the related hardware into it so that you don't lose anything. All the bolts and everything else that's associated with this is going to go into that valve cover, the reverse or the back side of the valve cover. Remember when I said earlier that we're going to mark one of the cams, probably the exhaust side, so we can get the proper orientation of the cam caps? Okay, this is the time to do it now. Use a permanent marker, or what I've used here, industrial marking pen, and mark the outboard side of the cam caps for one of the cams only, and this will designate you, or it will tell you which cam is which and which side to put it in. The orientation is perfect. And also put some paint on the head on the side where the cam is, so you know where the head is orientated. Start removing the cam caps one by one and place them in the correct order in the valve cover where you have all your cams located in hardware. Make sure everything is in order and everything is there and not missing. Start putting the cam caps in consecutive order into the back side of the valve cover. Make sure everything is designated for the right camshaft. Like this is marked with a yellow, and it's the outboard side, which designates it as the exhaust cam cap. And after you're done with that, make sure everything is not missing, no missing parts, and everything should be in order in the back side of the cam cover. Now, as for me, I prefer to hand tighten all of the cam caps in their correct orientation and in the correct side of where the cams they belong to, and in the correct order. Other people do it differently. I do it this way, and it prevents me from losing any of the bolts and all the hardware, or any of the cam caps and any associated hardware related to the cams. So that way you only have the head separated, and then you have the cam and the gear together, and it makes it easier to put everything back together again, and this is the method that I use. If you like what you saw and you want to see more of this project, it's going to continue, and then we're going to put the head back in, torque everything, and get everything going so we can drive this thing. It's a pain in the butt to get it fixed. I'm going to kill myself because of it. So, just stick around if you like what you saw. Like, share, subscribe, and also hit that notification bell so you can be notified of future videos that I make.